Let's start first up, before we get to Justin Fields, about Trevor Lawrence and the Sports Illustrated feature on him. Great stuff, great writing, great material.
Yeah, Mike did an awesome job on that, absolutely.
No question. I could not help, though, but think, like, what if Josh Rosen said what Trevor Lawrence said, or his father, or his coach? And what if somebody from Justin Fields' camp or Justin Fields said something like, that it's unhealthy to have a chip on your shoulder, or Justin Fields' high school coach said, you know what? If he walked away from it right now, he doesn't need football. Like, it really struck me, as in that regard. Albert, maybe and I'm not normally a glass half empty type guy.
Yeah, and it's a fair question. And I would say, like if I was another player, like I'd probably be wondering that. If I'm another quarterback in the draft, I'd probably be wondering that. But I also think it's indicative of how unique Trevor's experience has been. And here's what I mean by that. Can you think of another player who's as smoothly gone from star high school player to number one recruit in the country to star college player, champion at both levels, state champion in high school, national champion in college, to number one overall pick?
Well,
I don't.
If you remove the word, if you remove the word smooth from it, I'd say Jameis Winston, who hardly lost.
But was he number one high school quarterback in the country?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. No. I mean, even like Andrew Luck, and we think of Andrew Luck in that category, right?
Uh-huh.
But I mean, if you look it up, I mean, he was still like 70th or 80th in the country, which is outstanding. As far as how many kids play. But I mean, it's not number one. The only thing I could compare it to is maybe Peyton Manning, right? Like that he was that sort of recruit coming out of high school and was number one overall pick in the NFL draft. I guess that would be the one person you could compare it to. And I have no idea on John Elway. I don't think recruiting rankings existed back then. My point is though, Rich, it's just who he is. You know what I mean? I mean, he's had a fairly smooth ride. And it's not to say there haven't been bumps along the way, but I mean, this is a kid who's always been able to sort of create his own motivation, and his own motivation has been to be the best. And it's worked out for him at every turn. And he's won championships at every level, and he's been the best player at every level. And so, I just think it's maybe a product of how unique this kid's experience has been, even to a guy like an Andrew Luck or a Jameis Winston, the two examples we came up with there. Like, even with those guys, those guys could probably still look up, in their high school class and say, they'd have their own Brady Six, right?
Sure.
There's 6 guys in my high school class that were ranked ahead of me. He never had that, right? So I just think that it's sort of a product of what Trevor Lawrence's experience has been, which very few people can relate to, because his experience has been, it's just such a unique experience.
That was my first initial reaction to this piece and these quotes yesterday. What I just sort of set our question in this conversation up with was an overnight sort of what if somebody else had said this sort of thing? And, and how that would be viewed as a red flag, or not into football, or not completely ready to compete and things of that nature.
Yep.
But my first initial reaction was, well, I mean, kids hardly ever lost, so why do you have a shoulder chip if somebody's not ever looked at the scoreboard and said, I'm better than you, right? Very often.
Right.
And now that I'm talking to you also in particular, it's interesting. He's got a coach. His next head coach is going to be somebody who's not used to losing either. And I'm wondering if, the two of them, how's that going to work when both of them, Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence combined, have such, I don't think they lost more than, together. I don't think their losses even reached double digits, maybe combined. It's maybe scratching it. What's going to happen by week 8 in Jacksonville?
I know. And in an environment let's be real here, Rich, 7-9 would be a win, right? 7-9, going 7-9, that's a 6-game improvement. You might be the most improved team in the league and have a losing record, right? So, that's the thing about it is, and I look, that was the main question with Urban, right? Was that every loss, as at Florida and Ohio State, the way every loss crushed him and affected him. That was a big question with Urban. When he comes to the pros and, 12-4, 11-5 is an outstanding year. how are you going to handle the weeks where things didn't go your way?
Right.
And I think Urban's aware too that like it's a different deal. Like in college, I mean, one loss can literally, if you're at a place like Florida or Ohio State, it literally can feel like your season's over after a single loss. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. And I think it's a fair question to ask, like a kid who hasn't had a ton of adversity and like that's through no fault of his own either. I don't want to make this sound like it's like a shot at him, but he really hasn't had a ton of adversity. And then you got a coach who hasn't lost a lot, but didn't handle losing great when he did lose. It's going to be fascinating to see because again, and I can't emphasize this enough, like 7-9, I think in most people's worlds for the Jaguars this year would be a roaring success.
Yeah, it's +6. That's +6 in the win column. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.